800 years, 1200 years, India has been facing invaders from the West, and it has stood up to it. Otherwise, you would still not be 80% Hindu. To understand how our glorious ancestors stood up to all these invasions, all the barbarianism that happened once the invasion completed, to understand a bigger picture of how each king, each army fought their own battles to successfully thwart the evil designs. Let us talk to our guest of the evening, Dr. Omendra Ratnu. Ummi Bhai, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaste Shivai. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, such a wise and such a suave gentleman. So it's an honor for me.
Uh, Omi Bhai, so you've just written a book about Rana Pratap, and it's been a roaring success. I've seen a lot of reviews of it. Perhaps you can just touch upon that first so that people understand that you are uniquely qualified to talk about how the Hindus and the Indians, or I should say Bharatvarsh, stood up to the invasions. So please take it away, sir.
I honestly don't know if I'm qualified, Shivai, but the point is that when I looked at the history that was being taught to us, I can definitely say that those who wrote this history were definitely not qualified. I can say that much. It's a very negative way to start the thing, but that's the way it is. So, for example, uh, the biggest realization for me while writing this book was erasure of a 500-year history. 500 years of history erased. I'll tell you what I mean. The first Islamic attack on Bharatvarsh, which succeeded, was by Muhammad bin Qasim in 712 AD. He beheaded Raja Dahir of Sindh and took his two daughters as sex slaves to his Khalifa Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Now, sex slavery was unheard in the Hindu civic life. It's not that Hindu kings didn't fight each other, they fought each other, but never the queen or the princes or the ladies of the defeated king were taken as sex slaves. It was inconceivable to the Hindu psyche. Bappa Rawal, at about 10 years after Qasim's invasion, takes the reign of Mewar, becomes the king of Chittorgarh, and the Arabic Islam continues its attack on Bharatvarsha and penetrates up to western Rajasthan, overcomes Sindh, comes to western Rajasthan. The myth that Bappa Rawal breaks is that Hindus never fought together. Bappa Rawal formed a confederation of Nagbhat of Malwa, present-day Madhya Pradesh, Jaybhat of Gujarat, and Pulkesi Raja of South India. These
Chalukyas,
four,
yeah.
right? So these four kingdoms align, and still they could manage barely 8,000 troops. They were up against 60,000 troops of Arabs, uh, hired mercenaries, flushed with the money of the loot of Persia and Mesopotamia and northern Africa, which they had overcome in decades. Arabic Islam. And they came to us equipped with that manpower and that wealth. Near Mandovar, near Jodhpur, this Battle of Rajasthan was fought, and the Arab forces were decimated. And Junaid al-Mari, the man leading the Arab invasion, was beheaded, killed by Bappa Rawal. Arab historian Biladhuri himself writes, we didn't get a place to hide from the Rajput fury. राजपूतों के क्रोध से हमें सर छुपाने की कोई जगह नहीं मिली. And India returned to kufr. मंदिरों में फिर से घंटियां बजने लगी. And there's a very elaborate description of how Bharat returned to Sanatan Dharma. All the remnants of Islamic aggression were removed by Bappa Rawal. Bappa chased these Arabs up to Iran. destroyed parts of Iran, conquered Ghazni in Afghanistan. On way back, he erected the watchstones, watchtowers, about which I mentioned. I've even showed a picture in my book.
Yeah, hold on a second. We'll get the picture up on. Here we go.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
this is the promo.
Hmm.
I'll show you the watchtower. This is the
We have it
watchtower.
full screen, full screen, full screen.
This
Yeah.
is the watchtower.
Oh, nice, nice, beautiful. Yeah, watchtower.
This is Bapa
Khyber
Rawal.
Pass. Yeah, Khyber Pass of Pakistan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is Bapa Rawal.
Hmm.
Can I? This is Bappa himself. So I call him father of Bharatvarsh. Father, if there should be a father of the nation, it should be Bapa Rawal. Now, this happens in 730 AD, somewhere around that. After that, Rawal Khuman of Mewar continues. He's about 5 generations after Bappa. Rawal Shakti Kumar, Rawal Alhad, and these Mewar greats keep fighting. The first conclusive defeat of a Hindu king happens in 1192 AD by the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan at the hands of Muhammad Ghori. Shri Bhai, 7th century, like 8th century, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12th century, right? 500 years. Does anybody know what happened in Bharatvarsha? Does anybody know Mahmud of Ghazni was defeated here in Bharatvarsha by Raja Bhimdev, Chalukya king? Does anybody know Jats of Sindh defeated, molested Ghazni's army? Does anybody know how valiantly Somnath was defended by Hindus? That Arab historians, the Muslim historians were themselves forced to write how at the brink of defeat, Ghazni was destroyed Somnath. So 500 years, and of course the Ghazni was resisted by the Shahiya dynasty, the Anangpal, Jaipal, Tirlochanpal, Bhimpal, these great kings. So that Arab Islam failed in Bharatvarsha is totally erased because it doesn't suit the leftist narrative. Somebody has to be responsible for this. Somebody has to answer that why isn't Bappa Rawal taught in our schools? Why isn't Rawal Khuman's 24 battles against Arabs, every single battle he won, not taught in the schools? We talk about the second battle of Tarai, which was the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan, after which Prithviraj Chauhan was blinded and killed by Muhammad Ghori. That is where the whole thing begins. That is the extent of debauchery and the extent of treachery the leftist historians of this besieged nation have done with us. There are so many examples I can give you, but please educate me if I am wrong in my conclusion that where did the history of from 8th century to 12th century evaporate?
Sarji, even I am actually going one step beyond. Even after that, these people were very Mughal centric. They only talked about the Mughal kings. They did not talk about how Tarabai basically ran Aurangzeb all over the Marathwada region. Finally, he died of exhaustion. He just couldn't take it. He didn't know. नींद नहीं आए क्योंकि पता नहीं कब आएगी, कब मारेगी इसको. It's something that very few people talk about this.
Yeah, that's because our sense of history has not been fiddled with or mutilated. I would say it has been destroyed. We are a people without any history. I mean, as if we were simply dropped from the skies. The Hindus were dropped from the skies. The story of defeat of Arab Islam, then the defeat of Turkish Islam, then the defeat of Afghan Islam, by Hindus has been turned into a history of our invasions. No reference to the Vedic culture, no reference to our art and crafts, no reference to the kind of buildings that Hindus made, no reference to the kind of contribution to the trade routes, to the economy, to the taxation system, to the land revenue system. Zilch. This country was in absentia. The only relevant thing happening in this country were the Arab, Turkish, Afghan, Uzbek invasions, and we were sitting ducks. These are the extent of lies that have been drilled into our skulls. No wonder we are a race who are so ashamed, who are so embarrassed about our own existence. We have no sense of honor left in our civic life, in our history, in our dharma. To that extent, this project by the leftist jihadis combined with Congresses has been pretty successful. But then Mahadev sent us the internet and we started researching. Some of us, the remnants of the Hindu Dharma, we started researching and we started finding out the truth. And the biggest gift that our ancestors have left, not only the struggle, but for example, in Rajasthan, every battle, every king's life, every Muslim invasion has been diligently recorded. What I've written in Maharanas is not my imagination. What I have done is simply put James Todd, great British historian, Shamal Das, Veer Vinod, which is an official history keeper, then Rajendra Shankar Bhatt, Hirchand Ojha, some brilliant documentation by these great historians. And I have chronicalized the history of Mewar, tried to make it interesting with stories, because at the end of the day, I don't call myself a historian. I call myself a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. And I think I'm a good storyteller by that kind of response the book is getting. Because I made it interesting. I didn't get lost into dull figures and dull theories and, whatever was established history, I have put it in a narrative form, in a narration, and contextualized it with the present day Hindu-Muslim conflict going on in the subcontinent, reminding Hindus population that there are certain things which I have deduced in this book, on which I have written full chapters. For example, there was no Delhi Sultanate. And I give you concrete examples on that. I mean, I've been speaking for very long, so I'll give it a break. But I'll just sum up what major conclusions I drew. There was no Delhi Sultanate. Akbar was not great. He was a debauched murderer. We Hindus were not slaves even for one single day. Forget it that we were slaves for 1,000 years. This is a lie concocted by the leftists to fill us with an inferiority complex. We were never losers. And it's a strange thing. People work out a theory from logic. I went the reverse way. I had the theory first, and then I went to the logic, because we are 100 crores today. So how? So our forefathers must have done something, and to that limited extent, I have tried to put this in my book, Maharanas, the history of Mewar, touching briefly upon the history of Jodhpur, Marwar, with Durgadas Rathod and Maharaja Jaswant Singh Ji. But I'm right now in the process of writing another separate book on the Rathods of Marwar, which will be again path breaking, because Mewar history has still been told. The Marwar history of Rathods has been vanished. So these are the large lies that I discovered, Shri Bhai.
Omi bhai, this is amazing because when I, about 3, 4 years ago, there was a series that I did called The Real History of India. And I start right about the time Muhammad bin Qasim invaded. And then I talked about this is somebody who wrote it for PGurus. His moniker was the Evil Aryan or something like that. I don't know what his real name is. We always corresponded with emails, but he gave very detailed depictions of 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙪, his empire,
Yeah.
then Bappa Rawal. This was the first time. I mean, I'm telling you, I came to know a name called 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙪 or Bappa Rawal, and the fact that even today there's a city named after him, Rawalpindi. And see, so this is like our history is so vast, and none of us seem to want to read it. Viewers, go back and look at this. Is the 14th episode compendium that I put together in pgurus.com. It's called Real History of India, and we talk also about two brothers called Hakka-Bukka. And Hakka-Bukka is
Harihar,
actually
Harihar and
Harihar
Bukka.
Raya and Bukka Raya, and how they were forced to convert to Islam, and then they come to a Swami Vedaranya or some Vidyaranya, something like that, and then he converts them back to Hinduism. These were generals, and then that's how the Vijayanagar Empire, which restored South India, at least Hinduism back to South India, that happened under the Vijayanagar Empire. Even today, Sarji, some of the grandest ornaments on Balaji's Crete, in Tirupati, those are all given by Krishnadevaraya. आज भी है, इतना इतना बड़ा किरीट है, it is something else. There you go. That's the real history of India. 14 parts. Please do go through that. And this was our small, humble contribution to try and set the history right. So, Omi bhai, let's come back to your book. Now, see, even through all these Romila Thapar vomits, what I call as history, they always grudgingly acknowledge that Mewar was never conquered. Right? So tell us a little bit about how this guy is all over. He has conquered just about everything else, but Mewar still stood it. They withstood that heat. And this is not something where, milk and honey flows. This is in the middle of the Registan, or what you call as a desert. So can you kind of talk us through how Rana Pratap survived? They always make fun that he used to eat ghas ki roti. A little bit about thoughts about how Mewar survived the onslaught of the Mughals.
Firstly, Mewar is not desert, Haribhai. The city of
So this is
Udaipur.
how ignorant we are. So please go ahead.
Mewar is one of the greenest areas in the country.
Okay.
It is plush green, and the city right now, famous for the wrong reasons, Udaipur, is also called as Venice of the East.
Hmm.
It's built on lakes.
Hmm.
It's amazingly beautiful. I was fortunate enough to do my post graduation from Udaipur. I did my MS in ENT from Udaipur, RNT Medical College, under Professor Dr. Gupta. So that's as far as the geography is concerned. Mewar is a natural fortress. If a king and his army decide not to be caught by the invader, they will never be caught. There are so many intricate passes, there are so many caves and caverns, there are so many interconnecting things. So a very small army of Mewar was able to defend itself as long as they would not come out in open. Now, in Haldi Ghati, it so happened that the youngsters got excited about the initial victory. They went in open, and then a slaughter followed. But that's a long discussion. On Haldi Ghati, I have several videos. Haldi Ghati battle is something we should do a special episode upon, because it cannot be summed up in 5 minutes. It takes 30-40 minutes to decode what happened on 18 June 1576. Now, when you say that Mewar was never won, why should we restrict our discussion to Pratap? Because Pratap is one beautiful link in this unending chain of 1,000 years of Mewar Maharanas. He's a beautiful link, no doubt. But there are other equally beautiful kings we should talk about, and who were mightier than this so-called Delhi Sultanate. And even if we talk about Pratap, at the time of Pratap, Mewar was at its weakest because Mewar had been preceded by a little civil war within the royal family. Pratap's grandfather, Maharana Sanga, was murdered by Babur in January 1528 in Baswa in northern India, where he was fighting him for 1 year continuously. Now, after Sanga's death, entire Rajput confederation simply collapsed because leadership is everything. Without a leader, to each his own. Jaipur Rajputs flitted away, the Gwalior Rajputs, the Tamars, the Rathors from Jodhpur. So Pratap inherited a very weak Mewar. So much so that the entire area that he had was 300 square miles. And yet, Mr. Akbar the Great sends 4 peace expeditions to him between 1572 and 1576. Can somebody educate me why? What was the need of peace overtures by Mr. Akbar to Maharana Pratap? Because the so-called Mughal Sultanate was in making. There was a loose alliance with the Jaipur Rajputs, and Mewar had not succumbed. Akbar knew that if Pratap manages to defeat me, it's game up for me, because the entire Rajput confederation will come alive. They will see a leader in Pratap. So, after Pratap, his son Amar Singh Ji carries on the struggle. An equally great warrior. 18 pitched battles with Jahangir and not a single battle lost. Every battle was won by Mewar. Pratap's 2 battles, 76 Haldi Ghati and 1583, Battle of Diver. Conclusive victories of Pratap. Pratap dies a free man in 1597, 15 years after his conclusive victory at the Battle of Diver. How on earth were these lies concocted that Pratap was a defeated king, Pratap was a lone king, Pratap was an escapist, Pratap was an absconder? These kind of lies to confuse us about the greatest dynasty that served Sanatan Dharma in Mewar is a treachery, and that is what I have intended to expose in this. There were other greats like Rawal Khuman I talked about. Maharana Hamir Singh, in 1336 AD, in the Battle of Singoli, he destroys the army of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, arrests him, and keeps him as a prisoner in Chittorgarh like a dog for 6 months. And when he gives up the suzerainty rights of Sindh and Malwa and so many places, then he lets him go. Same, Maharana Laksha Singh, Maharana Lakha, goes to Gaya in Bihar, which is a Hindu tirth of a huge significance, and liberates it from Muslim anarchists who were taxing Hindu pilgrims. Distance between Mewar and Gaya is like 1,500 kilometers.
Yes, several days of wow.
Can you imagine the reach of these? This is happening in the 13th century, 14th century, sorry. Maharana Laksha Singh. The last Sunday I was in Ranchi and I happened to meet a few Sisodiyas, and I said, how come Sisodiyas are here? Sisodia is the dynasty of Maharana Pratap and they are all settled down on Mewar. Then they didn't know. But then I connected. I said, excuse me, maybe the Sisodiyas who came with Maharana Laksha Singh to liberate Gaya, few of them stayed back and settled down. So you are the ancestors of those great people who liberated Gaya. And I said, I literally touched them. And I said, I'm so fortunate that I'm touching Like it's just a matter of feeling. I'm touching the genes of those great people, right?
Correct.
So that's how beautiful our history is. Maharana Kumbha, the man fought 56 battles with the triple Muslim sultanates of Gujarat, Malwa, and Nagaur. Defeated all of them. And while fighting these wars, he built 32 forts within Mewar, of which the single biggest is Kumbhalgarh, which is an architectural marvel. They say the wall of Kumbhalgarh is the biggest after the Chinese wall. And he built the Vijayastambh, which is the emblem of Mewar today. The sheer architectural genius of that building, Shri, if you go to Chittorgarh, you will be mesmerized when you look at that building. Even today's architects can't make that kind of a building. And this was a man fighting wars all his life. He writes a granth on music, Sangeet Mimansa, which is the longest granth on music, and on Carnatic vocal music. Mind blowing.
Sarji,
500 years ago,
yeah.
a
Omi
Mewar
bhai,
Maharana was writing a longest book on Carnatic vocal music.
so Omi bhai, just to compliment what you just said. See, when Gita Govindam was written by composer Jayadev,
Yeah,
there was only one form of music. I mean, even today, right? You take the cradle was supposed to have started in Kashmir, and then it came down to what is the modern day Dharwar area. Pandit Bhimsen Joshi was one of the last great exponents of Hindustani, and
Kirana
from
Gharana.
there, these people who are knowledgeable about music were brought down to the Kaveri plains to work on these things by some of the Vijayanagar kings. उनको लाया गया वहां पर, and there was a guy called Govindacharya, if I remember correctly. Venkata Makhin was his father. These two made it more in a quantifiable form. They said that there are seven swaras. This is how you do it. All that mathematical calculations came about. But the important thing, Sirji, is even today, I'm telling you, the difference between Hindustani music and Carnatic music is in Carnatic music, to make it more interesting, they have what is called as gamakam. Whereas in Hindustani, वो जो सुर पकड़ते हैं ना, वहीं ठहरता है वो. They don't change. तो आपको आलाप इतना लंबा होता है. That is because they want to try and see how pure they can render the music. That is one
Yeah.
of the bigger differences. Other than that, it's so similar. Anyway, please go ahead, sir.
So Kumbha also arrested Malwa's Mahmud Khilji, and somehow all these Mewar greats never murdered or beheaded the kings, the sultans that they defeated. I have written very critically about this in my book. Somehow it's some kind of a Sadgun Vikriti, because it might add to your individual glory that you are such a forgiving king, but the amount of money the state lost, the amount of people that were lost, the amount of suffering that the whole people of Mewar had to endure, you have no business forgiving the murderers of your people. But except Pratap, who was merciless in his slaughter of his enemies. Todd writes about him when Pratap conducted the campaign of Diver. Pratap converted Mewar into a desert. They were corpses and a field day for vultures wherever Pratap went. So this was a Sadgun Vikriti from which the Mewar Maharana suffered. Apart from that, these were Dev Purushas who were sent by Mahadev to protect us. Each king's story is worth a movie, especially Maharana Hamir Singh. Very surreal saga. I mean, unbelievable that a king who was without a kingdom, who was in such a despair that he goes to Dwarika to renunciate, On his way, he meets a Charan lady, Rani Devi, and then she inquires, "Why are you so upset?" And he says that I am the king of Mewar, but I don't have money to fund my army, so I am renunciating the world. And the lady says, "Go back to Mewar, you will get Chittor. In 3 months, my son is coming with 500 horses and this amount of money. You will win it." So I've narrated the whole incident. From the brink of extinction, Mewar bounces back, and Maharana Hamid Singh goes on to become the biggest and the strongest Hindu leader of medieval India at his time, crushing Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Same was Sangha. Sangha was another warrior of par excellence. In spite of his personal tragedies, when his own brother stabbed in his eye because he wanted to become the king, Prithviraj, his elder brother, Sangha retired to Ajmer in Agyatwas, and then Prithviraj was killed by his brother-in-law, and then Sangha was beckoned to rule Mewar. A man who would have been relegated to the dustbin of history goes on to take Mewar to the highest level of the pinnacle of Hindu Pad Padshahi, as it was called at the time. But the lies erected around him that he wrote a letter to Babur to jointly defeat Ibrahim Lodi. I don't understand how these leftists come up with these lies, because a primitive logic that 6 years before Babur came to Bharat, Sangha had already defeated Ibrahim Lodi in 2 battles, battles of Bakrol and battle of Khatali near Dholpur. Had his son imprisoned, the son of Delhi Sultan, the so-called Delhi Sultan, was imprisoned for months in Chittor by Sangha. So Sangha is writing a letter to Babur to defeat the same Ibrahim Lodi. And then I found out in R.C. Majumdar's book of Delhi Sultanate that actually that letter was written by the Muslim Imadul Mulk, the minister of Qutbuddin Sheikh, and Bahadur Shah's father, Muzaffar Shah. And then that letter was intercepted by the Dungarpur His Highness, who was a vassal of Sangha. The letter was produced in front of Sangha, and then Sangha took a lot of compensation from Gujarat Nawab for such a treachery. And then Battle of Khanwa, one of the most decisive battles of Hindu-Muslim fate in the subcontinent, was fought in 16th March 1527. Every historian, every internet portal refers to Khanwa as a loss of Sangha and victory of Babur. I counter it by 9 points, that according to these 9 points, I think I submit that Khanwa was a victory of Sangha. And no point going into that detail, but about 6 months ago, before finishing the book, I went to Khanwa, the place where this battle was fought. It was a legendary battle. You must read about it in the book. The first time that the Rajput faced cannons, Babur was the first one to bring firepower into war, and Rajputs didn't know what to do. So they put their head into the cannons.
Mouth of the cannon, yeah.
Can you believe that, Shri Bhai? Can you believe the fortitude of these people? I mean, as an expression I used, इन लोगों ने अपने जीवन को मिट्टी के घड़े की तरह फोड़ दिया.
Yeah.
And as effortlessly as we do that, they blew themselves up. And not
one possible explanation for what you observed, Omi Bhai, about kings sparing the person that they vanquished in battle. If a king happened to be a Shiv Bhakt, if you look at Puran, whoever Shiva defeated, and whichever Asura he came across and defeated, he always spared that person's life and converted them into his Bhakt. Whereas if you are a Vishnu, even the Dasavatar, the opponent is always killed. So ये थोड़ा फर्क है इन दोनों में. So it depends. I mean, अगर हम शिव भक्त थे तो शायद maybe we thought that sparing the person's life, giving him a chance to repent, maybe was the way. I don't know. I'm
Well,
just giving you.
I mean, yeah, it is a philosophical view, and it's an interesting view. But to corroborate what you're saying, all Mewar Maharanas were Shiv Bhakts
Yeah.
because they were Eklingji's Diwan. And an interesting thing I want to share is, do you know, Shribai, why they are not called as Maharajas and they are called as Maharanas?
No idea.
You see, that's the beautiful thing. Uh, After the loss of Chittor, the first time it was lost in 1303 to Alauddin Khilji when he killed Rawal Ratan Singh and Maharani Padmini along with 20,000 other consorts did the johar. So 9 generations were lost in the frantic effort to get back Chittor. And then one of the kings, Rahab, he said, maybe we have become arrogant as rulers and kings of Mewar. From now on, we'll refer to ourselves as Maharanas, not Maharajas or Rawals. The land and the Mewar belongs to Shiva. He is the ruler. We are the caretakers. This was a big leap in human consciousness, if you ask me, because these kings were so rooted, they were so egoless, they were so unified with the masses of their state that for the coming 600 years, as they fought Muslim invasions, they could evoke that loyalty from the people of Mewar because they actually considered, not as a figure of speech, the first among the equals. That's why they were not Maharajas, they were Maharanas.
Just for my understanding, Omi Bhai, Rana means fight or, warfare. So that's how Rana derived from?
No, Maharana, as I said, if you go into the etymology, then of course Rana is Maharana is Arnav. From Arnav it becomes Rana, that fighter. Yes, that is one explanation. But I have my leanings as a poet, so I would rather stick to the poetic explanation that they gave this to the land belongs to Shiva. We are the caretakers. It was something which was, I would say, an evolution on the scale of humanity, and that's why it is so dear to me.
Absolutely, Omi Bhai. There is another example of this, but that happened much later, and that is that the king of Travancore started referring to himself as a Padmanabha Dasa because the temple is Ananta Padmanabha, where you have to go see it. One of the grandest, Vishnu is sleeping, and from his, Padmanabha means a lotus coming from his nabi.
Out of the nabi, yeah.
And there is Brahma there. It's a beautiful, and the amazing thing is the entire 15-foot murti is made of gold.
Wow.
Yes, it's made of gold.
Yeah,
they put black tar kind of stuff when the invaders are coming, so that they will think this is stone and leave it.
That's amazing. The kind of struggle our forefathers have had to endure fighting these Muslim invaders, which is relentlessly attacking us for the last 1400 years. My heart goes out to, and I mean, it's not that my heart goes out to, my heart simply melts. For these 2 years that I penned down this book, I was weeping, when I was penning down this, especially the reference to Saka Johars. The Saka Johar is a very typically Rajasthani thing. Although the first Saka Johar happened at the time of Muhammad bin Qasim, when Raja Dahir was beheaded, his queen Rani Devi, she committed Johar. But as a tradition, this came in Rajasthan, where a dozen Saka Johars were performed by Hindus led by the Rajput kings and the Rajput women. Uh, when Muslims would besiege the fort, then once the food and water would run out, then the men would go out to fight till death. But before going out, the women and children would be put to fire. The 10th chapter in my book on Saka Johar is one which will transform your understanding of the war and the sacrifices that our glorious foremothers did. Tens of thousands of women in their youth, in their full blooming youth, tied their 2-year, 3-year-old, 5-year-old children to themselves and immolated themselves
We appear to
live.
have run into a slight difficulty. Viewers, we will take some questions as long as it is on this topic. Are you back, sir? Omi
Am
bhai,
I?
can you hear me? Yeah,
I,
we are
I
okay.
can.
Continue. Last line फिर से शुरू कीजिए. Last line.
So I was saying that the tremendous sacrifice of the Saka Johar has been belittled by the leftists as a capitulation by the Rajputs, and even suggesting that Rajputs burned their women. These shameless people, they belittled and they maligned our sacrifice. But now we are again catching back our narrative, and we will try to fight it back through this book. I hope everybody reads this book, because this is the book which will electrify the Hindu Samaj, that we never lost. We never lost. And for 1400 years, of course, after the Britishers, it was too murky. I have stopped the book at Maharana Raj Singh Ji when he defeats Aurangzeb in 1680. That's where my book ends. And I refer to the next two chapters as the lie called Thousand Year Slavery and the Silence of the Lions, inspired by
Silence of the
Anthony
Lions.
Hopkins.
I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. The martial
Amazing.
communities of this country were silenced by the leftist onslaught. So I invoke the Rajput pride. I invoke the Kshatriya pride of Jats, of Gujars, Yadavs, Kurmis, of our Dalit Samaj, of Valmikis, of Katiks, who fought with bare hands against these Islamic marauders and defeated them. That you are Amrit Putras, you are sons of the greatest living civilization on this globe. Appropriate it, be proud of it, don't turn your back to it. In fact, the picture I got on this is very, very moving and interesting. Fortunately, look at this.
Oh, wow.
Silence of the lions. So I said, don't turn
Right,
your
right.
back on dharma, because if dharma is the only thing that stands between us and our total annihilation, so protect dharma at every cost, just like our glorious forefathers did. Let's take some questions.
Yes, sir. And while we get ready for the questions to be jotted down, perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about your plans on releasing the books. You have some trips planned, and you also went and met the Home Minister, Sri Amit Shah ji. Perhaps you can walk us through what was your experience meeting such a powerful person, more or less running the country right now.
No, I didn't go and meet him. He came. There was a release function. Amit Shahji released our book.
Oh, wow!
Yeah,
So see, I
so
didn't. I know there was a picture I saw. I didn't. I thought you was meeting him in his office in Delhi. So sorry about that.
no, no, no,
Go ahead.
no. That would be meaningless.
No,
Amit
this takes a
Shahji
lot of
gave a
planning.
very good speech on the release of the book. I spoke what I had to. My bottom line was, a country cannot have two ideals.
Hmm.
If you say that Pratap is great, then you cannot say that Akbar is great. This is schizophrenia. This is a split consciousness.
Sirji, let us start referring to him as Jalaluddin. Akbar means great. There you have given up the game.
Brilliant, brilliant suggestion. From now on, I'll refer to the man as Jalaluddin.
Exactly. Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant suggestion, Shri Bhai. I'm so
Thank you.
happy you
Thank
gave it to me. Brilliant.
you. Yeah. So
No,
let's talk about the book release
Jalaluddin
from.
could not be great if Pratap is great.
Right.
That was the bottom line of my speech. And Amit Shah ji gave a very good speech. He referred to some people calling him up that why are you going to release this book? He said it on a public platform. It's all in matter of record. It's on live on my channel on YouTube. On Jaipur Dialogues, it was telecast live and it was streamed, live streamed. So imagine people calling up the Home Minister of this country to not release this book. But Amit Shah,
Sarji,
Amit Bhai said
article
a
after.
beautiful thing.
Yeah, we had that article on PGurus.
Yeah, I know. So Amit Bhai said a very nice thing. It moved me to tears when he said that मैं डॉक्टर ओमेंद्र रत्नू की 800-900 वर्ष के कालखंड की खोई हुई हिस्ट्री को, इतिहास को जो उन्होंने खंगाला है और लिखा है, मैं उन लाखों करोड़ों हुतात्माओं को जिन्होंने धर्म और देश की स्वतंत्रता के लिए अपने जीवन की बलि दी, उनको श्रद्धांजलि देने आया हूं. It was a freedom very hard fought and hard won, and I'm very grateful to Amit Bhai that he articulated it. He said it openly on a public platform. That is what we need from our leadership.
Absolutely, Omi Bhai. So moving forward, you've had release functions in various cities in India, I suppose.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now you're setting your sights to a different faraway land. Can you share with our viewers a few of your plans? Just mota
Yeah,
mota, it's okay.
I
Yeah.
was in Bhagyanagar or aka Hyderabad 15 days ago. We had a grand function there. I'll be uploading the videos soon. Then the last Sunday I was in Ranchi. This weekend I'm going to Karnavati, which is also known as Ahmedabad. I have plans to go to Banaras and Prayagraj to release the book, also to Lucknow. In Jaipur, we are planning a big release in first week of July. And then in August, I intend to go to the US. The first trip, I'm landing at Atlanta, then Orlando, then New Jersey, Seattle, and then we'll end up a trip at Dallas, where we do this thing where Vikramaditya Strategic Initiative. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. Last year we couldn't do it because of the COVID and all. We bring all Hindu organizations who are working in different fields and who do not have the leverage, or they have not been marketed so well. So we give them a platform and we bring their work to the Hindu Samaj. It's known as the Vikramaditya Strategic Initiative. And this year we are doing it on 9th and 10th of September in Dallas. It will be a physically event. I will be there. And these are briefly the plans. And rest of the time, I mean, I'll also go to the Bay Area on one of the Sundays.
Awesome. I have to see. I'm actually planning to be in India, so we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
So मेरा ticket खरीद चुका है, unfortunately.
मेरा भी. So maybe we say goodbye to
Yes.
each other over the Atlantic.
Right. अरे सर जी, we are just one phone call away. इतनी नजदीकी है बस.
Yeah. That's the beauty of internet, and I always tell in my speeches, Mahadev has blessed us with internet for a reason. We got to push back. We're going to fight this evil mafia, which is on our necks, which killed our forefathers, brutalized us, raped our foremothers, and destroyed everything that was beautiful in our civilization. Yet we prevailed. So we owe it to our great ancestors, and we owe it to our children to pass on this legacy of freedom, beauty, and spiritualism onto them as a mark of respect and gratitude for our glorious ancestors, especially of Mewar. Because without Mewar, Hinduism would have been finished. And I say it with full responsibility. Ian Smith, one of the British historians, writes in his book Mewar, the longest living dynasty, that minus Bappa Rawal, Kuman, and Pratap, this world would have been Islamized. Imagine had they defeated the Mewar Maharanas and conquered India, equipped with Hindu numbers and Hindu wealth. Islamic expansionism, Islamic imperialism would be unstoppable. Who would fight them? Burma? Cambodia? Thailand? China? Who would fight them? The world community should be grateful to Hindus for saving them from this menace.
Couldn't agree with you more. Do we have any questions? Vinod Allam wants to know, can you suggest some books and references to know our real history?
I really don't know what kind of history you're asking for. We have so much varied history. We have history of Ahoms of Assam. We have history of Kalinga. We have history of South Indian kings, beautiful kings who fought Kakatiyas of Andhra, Gaudas of Karnataka. What history are you referring to? But I would recommend a brilliant small book by Dr. Ram Gopal Mishra, the Hindu resistance to Islamic invasion up to 1206 AD. This is an era on which there is not much has been written. Ram Gopal Mishra has quoted Muslim historians and established the Hindu victory from 7th century to 12th century. So these 500 years of saga, which has been erased by the leftist crooks of this country, has been documented and brilliantly written by Dr. Ram Gopal Mishra. I think every Hindu should read that book. It's a small book. It's a booklet.
There you go. Indian resistance to early Muslim invaders up to 1206 AD. It is available on Amazon, folks. So you can.
Everybody should read this book. This is a brilliant document. I have quoted in my book extensively from this book.
Wonderful, sir. We thank you, Sachin, for putting up all the data.
Yeah, that was wonderful, boss. That was quick, boss. That was real quick. Maybe he put 1206 AD, right? Maybe he put 1206 and he got there.
Saurabh Jadhav wants to know, please tell an authentic source to learn about forgotten history of Hindu kings like Rana Sanga, Rana Kumbha, Raja Dahir, and Suhail Dev Singh.
Like so Sanga and Kumbha are part of the Mewar lineage. So read Veer Vinod, read James Todd, Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan. The language Todd uses is mind-blowing. Let me read a. Do we have time?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me read something about Pratap. What he writes about Pratap. This is Todd. Okay, I quote him. Undaunted heroism, inflexible fortitude, that which keeps human honor bright, perseverance, with fidelity no nation can boast, were the materials. These are Pratap's material, opposed to Jalaluddin's, a soaring ambition, commanding talents, unlimited means, and fervor of religious zeal. These are Jalaluddin's assets. All, however, insufficient to contend with one inconquerable mind. There is not a pass in the Alpine Aravallis that is not sanctioned by some deed of Pratap, some brilliant victory, or oftener more glorious defeats. Haldi Ghati is the Thermopylae of Mewar, the fields of 𝙒𝙗, her marathon.
Wow.
And look,
so we have the book also. Here you go. Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan.
Buy this book. And something very, very strong, which when Pratap attains moksha, then look what Todd writes on attaining of his moksha. three, four lines, and it'll sum up what he felt for him. Ah, look at this, Shivai. Todd writes on the Moksha of Pratap. Thus closed the life of a Rajput whose memory is even now idolized not only by every Sisodia, but by every Hindu, and will continue to be so till renewed oppression shall extinguish the remaining sparks of patriotic feeling. May that day never arrive. Yet, if such be her destiny, may it at least not be hastened by the arms of Britain. This is Todd writing that Pratap's valor should not be forgotten. But if it has to be forgotten, then let at least the British state should have no role in playing in that.
So true. So true. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. So I think that brings our program to a close. There is one more question. Falsehood wants to know, Dr. Omendra, please, will you tell us about Raja Bhoj Parmar, 500-year rule in Rajasthan?
I'm sorry, I've never heard this name. I mean, Raja Bhoj was there in Madhya Pradesh, Malwa.
Madhya Pradesh, that's what I was thinking. Ujjain was his capital.
Yeah, Raja Bhoj in Rajasthan. I'm sorry, boss. I'm sorry.
Bapi Raju wants to know, who was the king who built more temples than any other king so far, sir?
Shiva, you better answer this. I'm not the guy on temples. I can tell you who built the forts.
This is a difficult question to answer, but you have to look at some of the South Indian kings. They completely devoted their lives to building temples, and every conquest was celebrated by building a temple. And then the Pallavas, the Cholas, the list goes on. In another hangout, I had suggested that if you really want to take a week and look at some of the grand temples, you could start at Tanjavur and drive down all the way to Trichy. This is about 120 kilometers. One city, one day, you can see the grand temples of Rajaraja Chola, then the Chidambaram temple, Nataraja, and then all the way up to the Trichy. And then there is a great temple called Srirangam, just outside of Trichy, which is Ranganatha's temple.
There was this question.
Another equivalent temple in Karnataka called Srirangapatna. See the thing, same deity.
Yeah, same deity. Yeah.
Many will always come to one place, they'll go to the next one. It is not complete without going to visiting both temples. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. So thank you so much. There's one more question. Piku Gaming wants to know, is there any point to mention about Bengali resistance against Islamic invaders?
Why not? I'm ready to fund any gentleman, any young historian who wants to bring this alive, document it with evidence, write about Bengali resistance to Islamic invasions. I'm sitting in Rajasthan. I'm ready to fund you. I will help you with money. I will help you with marketing. I'll also help you with editing the whole thing. Write about it. I openly invite people from South to write about Kakatiyas, Gaudas, write about Marathas, write about Ahoms of Assam. There is all the point. My compliments to you for bringing it up. Piku Gaming, you take the lead. I'll support you.
Okay. Yes, Piku. Thank you so much. Next question from Karthikeyan. Sir, how can current Hindu Samaj overcome the modern day jihadi influence? It seems jihadis are gaining upper hand day by day. Also, sir, any books on Vijayanagara Empire of South?
I haven't read much on Vijayanagara Empire of South. I would recommend, Shivai would be knowing more about that.
Yeah, I'll give an update. Please go ahead. Yeah.
As for the current Hindu Samaj, let me zero in on one thing. Our war with jihadis' influence is purely economic. Gone are the days of muscular fights on the streets. That's stupid talk. Educate yourself on what halal economy is, how their own funding zakat works, and the bottom line is rich Hindus have to reach out to the poor Hindus. Forget all dharmic resurgence if rich Hindus keep sucking the blood of poor Hindus. This is an unsustainable proposal. We have formed Dharmansh Foundation of India for specifically this purpose. Within a day or two, when things settle down in Rajasthan, we will be dispatching 2 lakh rupees to Kanhaiya Lal's family. That's the sole purpose of Dharmansh Foundation of India. All our money, I mean, not all, but some of our money should be at a collective central platform from where we can run different war rooms to counter the invasion and the onslaught of Abrahamic forces on Sanatan Dharma. This is an economic war. They are funding their warriors. We want Swayamsevaks. Swayamsevaks are great people, but they also have to feed their family. They also have to educate their children. If Hindus do not come up with a central, core, consistent, regular funding mechanism, I'm afraid we will never be able to defeat them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Sunil P wants a last question. Any plans to come to UK/London?
It will depend on UK and London. If they organize a book release, I'll come.
Okay.
Right now, I have none.
Sunil bhai, you can reach out to nimittekam.org, nimittekam.org, and I'm sure...
No, you can write to me on drratnu@hotmail.com, DRRATNU@hotmail.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. Or Facebook and,
You can reach us.
He can reach us, definitely. I'm easily accessible.
Thank you so much. एक घंटा चला गया. ऐसे ही बातों में एक घंटा चला गया. I'm so happy, Dr. Omendra ji, that you took the time out and to talk with us, and all the best and more power to you for your book, sir. You have just started this long journey. You are discovering yourself as an author, and more power to you. भगवान आपको 18-20 घंटे की टाइम दे हर दिन, ताकि आप नींद को छोड़कर, Arjuna is supposed to have conquered sleep. I don't know how many of you know this.
It was Gudakesh.
So, yes.
There is a word for this, Gudakesh.
Right, exactly. So maybe...
Well,
maybe
I survive on 4 hours, 5 hours sleep, so I might not be a Gudakesh, but I'm writing a book on Rathors. Wonderful.
So looking forward to all these things, and once again, Omi bhai, thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Shiva. Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.